may have noticed my accent. I'm not a native Kiwi, I'm from the UK. In the UK, we have a long tradition called pantomimes. Does anyone know what a pantomime is? Yes. Right, okay. Gentleman in the purple shirt, can you do me a favor and stand up? Wonderful. So everyone from this gentleman to that side is going to shout, Dev. And the gentleman that knows I'm coming for him, because of the look on his face, could you stand up? Thank you. And everyone, it's a bit unbalanced. Everyone to that side is going to shout, Ops. Hang on, stay standing, please. Are we ready? You'll all love this. If you ever go to England with your kids, they'll love it, trust me. Are you ready? Yeah. Ooh, we're getting there. Ooh. Again? Yeah. Now the competition is who makes the most noise. Yeah. Right, you lot in the middle, you're not left out. Next time we do it, you have to do both. Are you ready? So when they shout Dev, you shout Dev. When they shout Ops, you shout Ops. Yeah. Ready? Yeah. Oh, that's better. Ops. Ooh. Ops. Come on, you lot need to help them. Go. Ops. It's getting better. You see how better it gets when we work together. Dev, Ops. Brilliant. Thank you, guys. You can sit down now. The main reason I did that, to be honest, is poor Amir and I, we got the coma session. After lunch, you're all thinking about the next snack. Okay? So, yeah, I'm ex-military. We had a thing about waking people up. Sorry. So what am I going to talk about? Lots of stuff. Hopefully it's interesting. But mostly, similar to Amir, we probably could have got up here and done the talk together in some respects. It's getting stuff out the door and into the hands of our customers, and then keeping it running in the hands of our customers is really important. And I'm sorry, but clicker. Is it green for go? Ooh, look at that. So that's me. Yep, move on quickly. So, this is based off a presentation I did at a New Relic meetup a while ago, and decided to build it out a little bit further rather than trying to do something brand new for us. So, no disrespect to our keynote speaker, but Google deploy a terabyte of giggly bits per day. Facebook, 200, and I had to be careful about this one, fake light bits per minute. And AWS, we all know, launches 1 million features a year according to their stats. Get everybody in this one. I was fair, you know. Sorry, I missed Ali Cloud. Now, do we really care about that? Does that really impress our customers, how many things we release on a daily basis? It doesn't. Not really. Depends on your customers. AWS, it probably impresses us a lot because we're techie and we like those things. But most of our customers, if you work for a bank, if you work for a media organization, if you do jobs online or cars and you're reselling for people, they don't really care. But what we do care about is where we're trying to get to and what we're trying to deliver. And quite often, most of the people in this room and the teams that you work with are being challenged to do things that no one's ever really done before. Not your people, not you, and probably not the companies you work for. So you actually have to go back to the very fundamentals and start figuring out not only where you're going, but how you're going to get there. And that's not going to be easy because there are vendors that are all lining up at the door to sell you their perfect solution to your problem without even knowing what your problem is, in many cases. Ultimately, what we all want to do, specifically what we want to do in my teams, is we want to deploy code to our customers to make their lives better at any time of the day. And one of the things that my team came up with is we want to be able to do it from the pub. It just so happens that we have a really nice brewery pub called the Co-op just over the road. Incentive. And they do a really nice cider called Apple Crumble Cider, which literally someone finds it's back on in the pub, it's on Slack, and half the team vanish at about 4:30. Of course, had to go with the theme. Everyone recognize that scene? Hands up who doesn't. Gosh. It's the bar on Tatooine from the first Star Wars. We won't go there. Patterns and anti-patterns. Now, when we're picking how we're going to do things and where we're going to go, we have a lot of choices. Too many. Did anyone see the announcement recently that we now have a continuous deployment foundation? Sorry? Yep. So Cloud B is a part of it. Jenkins X is in it. Yeah. Yet again, we have yet more. I think it's even got Netflix's Spinnaker release deployment tool is part of it. Our choices are getting a bit scary. And we have to make choices very early on sometimes. Now, one of the things I've seen in talking to a lot of different organizations from a lot of different sectors is that quite often we're not very good at getting the people who actually know what the choices are and what the implications are of the choices we make to actually make the choices. So we make choices at a very high level instead of actually talking to the people who are going to have to actually do the work with the choices we've made. You probably, many of you have seen the seminal piece of work on patterns and anti-patterns of DevOps. Again, these are from my personal experiences, and I just gave them my own names because what the hell, everyone needs a good Star Wars theme occasionally. So typically we have, as with Amir's, you have the three silos. You have Dev, Ops, and QA. You can juggle those planets around any which way you like. They're not really talking to each other. We all know that. We all know we're trying to solve that problem. That's why we're at a DevOps conference. But often what I see is QA and Dev start patching up together and start working closer together and start solving problems together, and the QA and the Dev start trusting each other, and hey, QA actually let Dev test things. Woo. Or actually start helping them with automation. It's good stuff. But Ops still sit at the side. And in fact, when I arrived at NZME, that's pretty much how it existed. We had a little Ops team over to the side who were basically the gatekeepers of everything. And it wasn't working very well for the organization. We never went down this route, but I have come across many organizations that do. They decide that this new DevOps thing is brilliant, and all their Ops people become DevOps engineers. Except they're still sat in a silo, still doing things the same way. None of them are actually developers. Few of them know how to actually code. They're system administrators. My experience has been that this is lessened to a great degree depending on the operating system that you are running everything on. It's getting better, though, I have to say. Has anyone seen The Force Awakens? So effectively, we have the Death Star again, but this time it's a planet, but yet again, it gets blown up by the same small guy in a single fighter kind of scenario, while another team are, blowing up the thing on the, it's like, repeat. And that's a little bit exactly what you have when you go from an Ops team to a DevOps team. It's the same problem underlying. You're not fixing anything. My personal view is we need a new model. This isn't, I'm not saying this is the perfect one. This is a representation of the way my brain works, I suppose. I could have drawn it as a funnel. My aim here is to put the customer at the center of what we're trying to do. Because the other problem I see with a lot of DevOps organizational changes is that it becomes very technical. It becomes an engineering issue. It becomes an IT issue and not a business objective. So you have people in the teams who actually begin to forget the reason that they roll into work every day is actually to kick out code to supply an experience to their company's customers, to bring in cash, to pay the salaries, to do it all over again. It's a little bit like the infinity loop that everyone always draws for DevOps. It's a repeat and rinse process. So one of the things we did at NZME is we actually made sure that we had combined into our cross-functional teams UX, dev, and quality engineering. And we did that through practices. So within each of my teams, DevOps is a thing. It is the fundamental way that they run. And the ops aspect is a practice. What that means is that within the team, one person is the owner of the practice of everything around the tooling and how we do things. They are not the person who does it all. Every single member of that team can code and can actually work in that space. There should never be a scenario whereby one person is always the one that has to fix the CI/CD pipeline, the tooling that we use, or the infrastructure that anything runs on. But one of the things I also wanted to do was I wanted UX to be much, much closer to the other end. Everything they think about doing to make the experience better has a ramification all the way through everything we do, right down to the infrastructure we're running. So if your infrastructure has a constraint that means that your customers have to wait 4 seconds for your page to load, that's a UX issue. If the UX come up with a great way of coding up and building an interaction with our customers, but actually that's going to cost us an extra $20,000 a month to run, that's a business problem. Are we willing to make that trade-off? And that's kind of why I centered it around with the product lead, the product managers, the product owners, depending on which framework you're using and how you approach that. Some organizations have product managers and product owners, because that's the voice of those kind of decisions and the balance point, or it should be, in my opinion. I'm very opinionated, by the way. I think it comes with gray hair. I now understand my father and why he got more opinionated as he got older. It's a little bit scary. So one of the things that we wanted to achieve by orchestrating ourselves that way was flow. Anyone recognize that young gentleman? I haven't got any sweets. Where's Sarah? Sarah, have you got any chocolates left? Ah, look at that. Can anyone tell me his name? Really? Someone, who said it? Someone said it then. There was someone over here said it first. Oh, sorry. Bad target practice. I couldn't believe it when I found this photo. Yeah, I won't tell you why he got snapped. You can all look it up. It comes up on Google Images quite quickly. Avoiding gates. Gates are the death of DevOps. Anything that stops the flow of code or spice. I'm sorry, I'm a total sci-fi buff, and I'm really excited about the new Dune movie, is a bad thing. That's what we're trying to do. You've seen it this morning from other speakers, the continuous flow of code to our customers. But not everything Bill does is bad, and I happen to agree with him on this one, along with an often used other quote of his about lazy people. Except I don't put myself in that, I put the team. So instead of gates, I like to use one of these. Now, I grew up in England. We went for walks in the country. I have actually found a couple of these in New Zealand. I didn't get all excited. And a thing called a kissing gate, which is a very similar approach. Who here's from the UK? You've all walked across one of these? Yeah. It's called a stile. An arrangement of steps that allows people, but not animals, to climb over a fence or a wall. A gate stops you in your tracks, unless it's wide open. And what's the point of a gate if it's always wide open? And again, if you've ever walked in the country, what's the first rule of walking in the country? Close gates behind you. So again, a stile is a means of actually making some checks. It doesn't mean you have to stop things. It doesn't mean we have to, as the gentleman, I think it was from Westpac, said this morning, where something didn't go into deployment because there was bad grammar in the release notes. What a stile does, or the concept of a stile, is informal, formal checks within the team that are deploying. Peer review. Is the testing done? Have we actually figured out how we need to test this before we did it so that we can write some automation scripts in our testing to actually get this done and through and out to production quickly? But most importantly, the style is actually making sure that we know that we're building the right thing to start with. We're not stopping it, we're just adjusting it as it's coming through. So we have a saying in my teams is, if you come to us with a solution, we have a problem. Come to us with a problem and we'll help you work out a solution. But a lot of why we did this comes down to these concepts. And I've heard other people refer to lean today as well. And this all harks back to the Toyota way, which goes all the way back to 1947. So this isn't new stuff. This is good, grounded, solid stuff. I won't go too deeply into what these are. It's really easy to look them up, thanks to our friend Jennifer and her team at Google. But essentially, it's reducing waste. Gates are wasteful. Handoff is wasteful. I saw a stat the other day that over I think it was 4 different handoff points, they lost 50% of all information that was being communicated. Gates get in the way of the clear communication, not only of intent, but also what you're trying to achieve and do. But one of the things that's really important for me is this one: overburden. And the reason that one's important to me is I've worked for a lot of companies over the years, hence the gray. And we're really, really good at being really, really bad at focusing and actually getting ourselves to concentrate on the thing that has the highest value right now and requires all our effort to get it done right. So we keep loading ourselves up. We keep taking on things. But what that actually stops is our ability, and I think it was Jennifer's slide this morning, which I actually passed on to my entire team because I loved it so much, was we actually stop ourselves having the ability to solve the problems that would actually give ourselves time to innovate because we're too busy doing stuff. And that's a big focus point of mine. One of my rules is, if you do it twice, it had better be automated on the third occasion. And that goes into testing. So the idea that testers do all the testing, in my view, is a nonsense, and we stopped doing that. We built an automation framework so that we could have everybody testing. Everybody can deploy. There isn't a single person in my cross-functional technical teams that can't do all of those things. There is nothing stopping a tester testing his own code or her own code because our quality engineer has already looked through with them and decided these are the things we value that we must test. This is how we should test it, and these are the scenarios that describe how the system should work. So a developer can run all of that automation himself and actually check that the code he's about to deploy works properly before he even goes to peer review or gets the QE to look at it. What that does is it puts accountability back in the hands of the developer to actually stand up their own code properly and actually know that that code is code complete and ready to go themselves and passed all the tests before it goes anywhere. One of the things that I've come across multiple times in conversations and why I say about some of the stuff we did is the approaches that different organizations take to try and to implement DevOps. And we've heard some really good case studies today, but there are some really horrible ones that I've come across as well. And one of the things I wanted to highlight in this is right back at the beginning of your choices of why we do and how we do what we're going to do next in terms of DevOps is really, really important. And what I've seen several times is these 3 scenarios where what we actually do is we start off on a process of what's the quickest way that we can become DevOps, because that's a tick in the box exercise. It's very similar to a lot of organizations adopting Agile. And what I find is that depending where you're coming from, you take one of these streams, or people take one of these streams. But ultimately, the thing that will make your implementation work is your people. Because if your people own what they're doing and actually have a say in how it gets done and make all those cultural changes to the way that they interact with the systems that they're building and maintaining and looking after and growing, then you will win. That's why Spotify did its approach. Not sure I agree with it for every organization, but it worked for them. As Peter Drucker said, culture will eat strategy for breakfast every single time. So if you go about trying to implement because you've got KPIs that you need to hit, so that's your driver, or you've got a project to deliver and that's your driver, it will never work properly unless you are actually taking everybody with you on that journey. And that was the thing I was lucky enough to be allowed to do at NZME. It was part of why they brought me in to run the team, was I was allowed to take all of these disparate teams that came from 3 different companies and meld them together and find all their commonality and take them on that journey, a little bit like the picture of Mars at the beginning, so that they actually owned the process. In many respects, all I did was enable them. I didn't, even though I'm opinionated, I kind of didn't shove my opinions down their throat. I guided them and enabled them. I have a bunch of smart people who basically owned the process. They're continually improving what they do. So things I believe we need to work out before we head into a DevOps, or even while we're in a change to DevOps, is some simple questions. Who decides how it will work? That's a really important one, as I said earlier, because the people who are going to be doing it need to be engaged in making the choices. Are we in this together? And that goes back to what a lot of our other speakers have said about the business getting behind the process and actually owning it and wanting to see the outcomes. But I think it's important that we actually understand what are the outcomes we're looking for. And I'm not always sure that that's fully understood all the way through the business. How do we ensure we are building and deploying the right things? This one is really, really important. And it goes back to my first slide, is, does it matter what we're deploying? Are we actually deploying things that matter to our customers? And back to the point I made about we want to be able to deploy when we want. That actually means when it suits our customers as well. And specifically, you know, one of the things that I was after was if we're deploying the right things in the right way, we've built it right, it solves a problem, then we can go to the pub because our systems are not breaking and we're not always on call and we're not constantly getting disrupted. Because we need to take the time, going back to the waste part, to actually build things right the first time. What do we need to monitor and how? We've had lots of conversation about SLAs and SLOs, okay? For each organization, that will be different. I've yet to see anybody give a standard metric of what you should do per application. As you all know, depends on your customers, what's their appetite? As an internal customer, an external customer, what's their appetite for failure? What are the metrics we value? Again, these might not be the metrics that we typically think of from a DevOps perspective, from an engineering perspective. I saw a case study a while ago from New Relic where a team had actually started using it for their customer interaction and monitoring at a higher level than they'd previously done. We typically think that, you know, we need to use Google Analytics or something else. But we have more and more tools at our fingertips that can help us actually understand what's happening with our customers. But then we mustn't swamp ourselves. And again, this is one of my strong points, is actually having a sit-down conversation and letting the right people actually figure that out and implement it. Back to Bill Gates, how do we achieve good lazy? A little bit of laziness is not a bad thing because lazy people tend to find the simplest, easiest way of doing something. That was Bill's quote. I'm not saying everyone should be lazy or we should encourage lazy, but one of the things that was often talked about when we were home educating our kids was the power of daydreams. and the power of letting people actually sit there and mull over a problem. Now, to some managers, that looks like they're being lazy because they're not doing anything, but actually they're thinking something through. I had to point out to someone recently that one of the reasons that sometimes teams get fatigued is because when they're dealing with particularly complex technical issues, they may well clock off at 5 o'clock, but their brain doesn't. Their physical body might have walked out that door, but they're still working on that problem in their subconscious, in their mind. You know, who here has woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning or in the bath or anything else and gone, oh, I know how to fix that problem, and then actually done it? There's a gentleman at the back. I've got another chocolate. Well, that was a better shot. And that again comes back to what I was talking about with the wastes. Okay? If you take on too much stuff, people get bedraggled, they can't solve the real problems, they're not focused on the real problems. And that's the reason we try to automate as much as we can. Self-healing systems, if you've got if you've got time to build those, how much time does that then release for you to actually work on stuff that delivers better value to your customers? And most importantly, as I said for my lot, how do we deploy it from the pub? It makes it sound like we're a bunch of alcoholics. We are, I admit it. We are. Yeah. But the point being is that if we've built our capability right, if we've got all the other things lined up, there's actually no reason we can't work from anywhere we choose to do what we need to do. So one of the ways that we deal with concepts of being on call, how we fix issues, and everything else is having that flexibility of being able to actually get in and do stuff from where we need to. Having the right alerts in place so that, someone can head off an issue earlier on. Is letting the team actually, or the teams, actually define how they do that to some respects. There is one more pattern that I do feel, oh my God, I've become a conference speaker. I'm about to say those words. I do feel really passionate about. Is that Agile, DevOps for me came out of doing Agile. First time I ever did DevOps, it wasn't called DevOps. It was just, how the hell do you get this code in front of the customers in the fastest possible way and the way that made sense? You cannot do Agile unless you are doing automation. That's a simple rule of life. I've never ever seen anyone actually manage to achieve Agile software development without automating. If you're not automating your tests and you're not automating your CI/CD, if you don't have a deployment pipeline, you are not doing Agile software development. It's pure and simple. You may be thinking you're doing it, you're not. DevOps is a natural evolution, if you like, of Agile software development. And underlining both of them is that wonderful little thing called Lean, which has been around for half a century and more, but which we currently seem to believe, in New Zealand at least, is a new buzzword. It doesn't matter what framework of Agile you're using. It could be Scrum. We use Scrum because we're product delivery teams. That's what we're focused on. Oh my God, I've still got 10 minutes to go. We might have some Q&A if anyone wants one. Or you might get biscuits early. Who wants biscuits early? You're supposed to say no. So, but Lean is definitely worth digging into if you haven't previously, because ultimately what we're doing is we're producing something exactly the same as a factory. That's what it does. And I worked in a factory many years ago that was doing Lean. And it was a long time ago. My kids are now grown up. I worked in that factory when they were born. That factory was doing Lean. It was an old thing then. I talk to people in the manufacturing industry who kind of look at us in software development and go, you guys only just catching on to that? Really? And the main essence of Lean, it's not Kanban boards and all the rest of it. They're great ways at showing you what you're doing. It's getting rid of your waste. It's minimizing your waste so that you can produce better outcomes. Who here uses Kanban? Good. Everyone else should too. Sorry, I'm opinionated, okay? Kanban boards are probably one of the best inventions ever for actually being able to see what is actually happening within your teams in a very transparent manner that allows everyone to have a really good conversation around how to reduce those wastes and how to actually get code out the door. In fact, a good friend of mine, Carl Weller, just happened to release a blog post this morning on Lean and DevOps. I was like, Carl, this is spooky, man. We haven't had a conversation, and I'm talking about this today at a conference. So can I give a call out? I'll find the link for anyone that's interested. Obviously, it came out too late for me to stick it in here. It's a really good read. I suggest anyone who wants to know a bit more reads that one. Final word. I don't like doors as much as I don't like gates. They just stop you doing things. And automatic doors, things that just get out of your way, just make everyone feel like a Jedi. Thank you.